Hey guys, I want to thank you for being here today. So today is a little different and it's a little more exciting for me. A lot of times you actually see me working on other people's PCs. Most of the work that you see uploaded here to YouTube is me building things for other people. Well, today I get to be a little bit more selfish. I am working on building something pretty special, kind of like a Christmas gift to myself is what I would call it. Anyway, I have right next to you guys a pile of parts. And excuse the mess behind me, it's pretty gross. That's my work. That's everything I do. From 3D printing to desktops to laptop parts and you name it, that's all of it. So eventually, I'm sure you'll see a lot more of that. But in the meantime, let's turn this pile of parts into a functioning computer. Okay, so I said we're going to turn this pile of parts into a functioning computer, but you guys haven't even seen the parts yet, so let's go over it. Okay, so first of all, you're going to see a lot of parts that look like they're kind of mix and match, and that's fine. When you build a computer, it's really all about what you want on the computer. So for me, I'm going with the parts that I know are the most reliable, but also kind of my favorites. So I went with an nzxt Kraken 240. Why? I didn't want a ton of RGB. nzxt makes a brand or another version of this exact cooler that is not 240, or sorry, that's full RGB. I didn't want it. The RAM, 64 gigs of Corsair, non-fancy. You know why? No RGB, I don't want it. Power supply, we got a Corsair SFL Series 1000L. For the board, I went with a B650i. Reason I went with a B650i is it's pretty much all that's available right now for ITX form factor. So if you want anything beyond ITX, or if you want anything ITX, you pretty much have to go B650. Otherwise, your options are super, super limited. For the SSD, we've got, for the primary, we've got a 1 terabyte 990 Pro. And for the secondary, a 2 terabyte 980 Pro. And then looking at that CPU, you guys might know what that is. That is a AMD Ryzen 9800X 3D, best gaming CPU on the market right now. Behind the SSDs, I just picked these pieces up today because, you know, I actually want to play the thing tonight. I got myself a wireless Logitech Pro X60 Lightspeed keyboard and the reliable G502 wireless, which is the same mouse I use right there. So what am I building this in? Good question, even though I knew you guys didn't ask that. My build is intended to replace my Xbox. So I'm not opposed to the Xbox by any stretch of the imagination. I've actually loved my Xbox, which is why I continue to buy one over and over again. However, I enjoy modding on the PC for a lot of the games that I play a lot more than I enjoy my Xbox. So I decided to go with a mini ITX. It's called the Hyte Revolt 3. It's actually a pretty common case that is out there these days, but it's similar in size to the Xbox, a little bigger, a little wider. And if you've ever seen the nzxt, oh, I forget the model number. It was the one that started on fire a few years ago. It kind of came out at the time that was starting on fire. So anyway, it's a solid case. It works well. I've actually built in it before for another customer, only I'm not doing white. This case is black. It's just the box shows it in white. Next, we've got the AMD Radeon 7900 XT because my projector does 4K 120, and I'd like to take full advantage of that. So that's it for parts. Let's go ahead and get started with building this thing. Yes, this is said theater room with a 120-inch screen, my game shelf over there. You can see I've got my Switch dock, my Xbox, and my PS5. And this computer is just going to be replacing that Xbox. So, basically, I didn't get too much into the explanation of my motherboard here. And the reason I went with this, it's not just because of availability It's also because of the features that the motherboard had. I'm looking for dual M.2 slots, and so this is going to have that. It's going to have everything I'm looking for that way. There's definitely going to be some components on this that I don't use or take full advantage of, such as Wi-Fi, which just won't be needed, and things of that nature. So I will go ahead and leave those. I'm not leaving those things in the box. I actually removed all of it because I might need something. And I might decide later on down the road, hey, I do want Wi-Fi because it's a little faster. Who knows? I run a 1 gig fiber connection here. This is Cedar Rapids, Iowa, so that's about the fastest you can get around here. Some of our connections are starting to go 10 gig. That's if you enroll with Mediacom. I do have Mediacom. It's just, I don't think our area has the 10 gig speed yet. So waiting on that to happen. Anyway, moving on. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out of its anti-static bag here and place it on top of the box. And this is gonna be a little harder for you guys to see because this particular motherboard box is taller, one, than a standard motherboard box because it's got so much more in it, being that it's ITX, because they pack so much into one of these tiny little like motherboards that anything can happen. So the part I don't like about building an ITX hardware on ITX hardware is the fact that you get a lot of you end up with just struggling with the cooler to cram things into small spaces that really you shouldn't have to, but you know, it's the nature of the thing, so it is what it is, I suppose. Okay, so this is an LGA socket. So basically what you do is you just take this AMD 9800X 3D, you carefully drop it in there, make sure the triangle points the right direction. You guys have seen me build computers enough, you know exactly what I'm doing right now. Pop that cover off. It looks like we're seated pretty firmly in there. And then I need to swap out the head on my LTT screwdriver to something just a little bit different. Need to go with a smaller bit so I can work on the SSD installation. Now there's one port here on the main part of the board, and there's one port on the back of the board. And I'm kind of excited to show you that part because it's not something that you typically see. Yeah, maybe that part didn't need to come off. Who knows? I actually built one of these, I think it was like last year, but it wasn't a 9800X 3D, obviously, because that wasn't out at the time. But built on an ITX board, and it was nice. It was very nice. And I'm guessing that feeds some kind of RGB, so I'm going to leave that alone. But here's my first M.2 slot right here. It looks like it's going to be real nice. So we're going to go with the 990 Pro for this slot because it's my primary drive, coming in at 1 terabyte. And the reason I did this is because I didn't want to go with the 990 2 terabyte for my primary drive, just because I don't really want to install anything but my basic programs and files onto primary drive. Like I said, this is going to be, it's not like this is going to be some kind of workhorse computer like the one that's literally running this recording at the moment. This is going to be my gaming computer, so that's what I'm striving for in this sense. Okay, it opens up that way, and then I got to take the Gigabyte peel off. They have a little peel over their thermal pad here. Sometimes the fingers are too big and don't want to grip that type of thing, so it doesn't always work out. All right, I'll go ahead and slide this into the slot. And it looks like there we go. Now we're secure. And we'll click that back in place. We'll pull the other peel off of the top. and another peel on the top half of the slot. And we'll stick this back in place some way, somehow. It looks like it doesn't really key back into holes or anything like that. It just is what it is, I suppose. Kind of have to guess where it's supposed to wind up, which I don't like that as much, but it is what it is. Okay. There we go. All right, and so far, normally what I would only tell you to do is to install the SSD and the CPU. You're probably gonna hear my dog. She just groaned over here. She's down here with me right now while I do this recording. But anyway, most times I'll tell you just to install the SSD and the CPU. Since this is a mini ITX build, and you can see the size of these hands, you're pretty big in comparison to this board. Once this board gets inside that case, it's going to be way harder to actually get things done. So the idea here is to do as much as possible before putting this into the case. So the next step for me here is to put in this final screw, and then I'm going to flip it over and we'll install that secondary SSD. That secondary SSD goes right back here. There is a plate on the back of the motherboard, and that plate covers an M.2 slot that's right here. Now, there's a lot of other stuff on the back of this board, but nothing that's I/O related. So in reality, this is pretty much the only thing that you're going to have to pull this off for. And that is if you choose this particular board. Not all ITX boards do have this rear slot. Some of them only have a single slot. A good chunk of them only have a single M.2 slot. So you might get stuck with something that doesn't fit, that's not exactly like this. So if you want a nicer board, you're gonna have to pay a little more. I think I paid about $220 for this guy, or $239 or something like that off Newegg. So that lifts up. Okay, there's one more. It's honestly, it's a whole bracket type thing, so. Not quite what I'm used to, but it'll work. And there's a thermal pad on the bottom of that bracket as well. So I'll end up pulling the sticker off of that as well before finishing up mounting. And now we got our 2 terabyte 980 Pro. Really, really, really excited for this build. Like I said, I rarely do stuff like this for myself. So this is kind of my, once a year I try to do something nice and big for myself to reward myself for all the work I deal with in a year. And I know that sounds a little silly, but my wife tells me it's a good thing that I'm doing something for myself for once, so. If she's okay with it, I'm okay with it. Okay. I'm also pretty excited. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, if you're pretty new to the tech world, you might not be, but CES is right around the corner. And that's the Consumer Electronics Show. And that's in Las Vegas. And I will be in attendance this year for the first time ever. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. Well, the quality of the pad on this is not that great. The thermal pad, sorry. The reason I say that is because as I peel up the sticker, the pad wants to just come right with it. It doesn't want to adhere well to this bracket. Which, whatever, not a big deal. But if you guys are hearing the bling behind me, it's my work computer. I may have bailed a little early today to work. You know what? Forget it. I'm I'm not going to deal with the thermal pad on the on the bracket. I'll just put it right on the SSD. And there'll be some people here that are like, oh my gosh, you're touching it. Yeah, it's fine. Minimal hand oils as long as you don't handle it a ton. And I was at more risk of handling it a ton doing what I was doing. So originally, here we go. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. All the stuff that's blowing up is not related to anything I do, so we're good. We are good. Keep on going with what I'm doing here. That's not the right thing. There we go. Screws are slightly different size on this, so. Boy, that's really annoying though. So next week is my birthday. I am turning 33, and I'm not sure if I'm excited about that or if I'm just kind of here for it. Because here, I'll just call this my birthday gift to myself, because that's a little better, right? One thing I would love to do, and shout out to anybody else who's out there if you're interested in partnering with me to do this, is there's a lot of people that don't get gifts at Christmas, which is just around the corner from my birthday. That's why it made me think about it. And one thing I would love to do is be able to put something together, even if it's way more basic than what we're doing here today, for a kid who doesn't get Christmas or won't have a chance to have a good Christmas this year. I am working on starting a nonprofit organization surrounding computers and college and kids that are going to college. And essentially it's going to be a nonprofit for kids who can't afford a computer when they're going to school. And so it's going to take some legs and some work to get it off the ground. I have to take some time outside of my busy work schedule and actually just go to Iowa City, which if you're not from my area in particular, Iowa City is about 25 minutes south of here. And they have a nonprofit that's devoted to people. It's the Nonprofit Resource Center, I think is what it's called, or something like that, to help you get your nonprofit up off the ground and get it going. So my nonprofit is going to be called Refurb Hope. I already have the logos made up and everything, and that nonprofit is going to be good for getting kids laptops, and they're not new. The idea is that they are refurbished, which is why it's called Refurb Hope. But I'll be seeking donations from companies of laptops that maybe are out of main service, but would still be good for use for kids who can't afford it. So, okay, so if you just want to take a quick look here at my rear I/O, again, this is an ITX build, so it's very limited. You know, you can tell I've got 6 USB ports on it. I've got a display port and an HDMI if I ever need to use onboard graphics, which I won't be taking advantage of on this particular build. I won't even be doing a line out for microphone or speaker at all. So you're probably going to see, you know, mouse, keyboard, and potentially headset plugged into those USB ports. And that'll be about all the I/O that goes into this computer. So anyway, the next step in this process is I'm going to start sorting through some of these cables and seeing what we need to plug in before we actually put this board in place. And the reason I want to do that is because the next step is putting this board in place. And I know a lot of this can be done when you're kind of working on the, I'm sorry here, I'm thinking while I'm talking instead of doing them at the same time. Anyway, a lot of these, and I'm not sure where my train of thought was going. a lot of these things can't really be done so easily once the board is installed. That's all I was going to say. So we have, these are the fan extensions. Gigabyte has, why can't I think of the word right now? Proprietary connector on the end of this board, or on the end of this cable that goes into their board. And then the other end goes out to a fan, or in our case, our Kraken cooler. So that will be something that we will definitely be taking advantage of at some point. It's just a matter of when I install that and how easy the access will be once I get it into the case, okay? So with this case, there's gonna come a lot of challenges. Everything's gonna be stuffed pretty tightly in there. But we'll get it done. So this here is a USB splitter. This is another one that I'll probably be installing prior to our beginning here, and it's because the USB, like, you actually have to have USB functionality on this guy, otherwise you pretty much are screwed. And yes, I said screwed. Like I said, there's limited I/O on the back, which is over here now. But if you wanted to have any sort of USB devices plugged in internally, such as the Kraken cooler, which does have a USB interface, you wouldn't be able to do that without having this splitter in place, because again, proprietary connector right there. So let's go ahead and figure out where these connectors plug in at before we get too far into things here. It looks like this one plugs into kind of a crappy spot, not gonna lie. It plugs in right above the GPU, so I am not a fan, but it's what we got. It's what we got to do. So once I get the GPU installed, which is in these cases, and with these types of builds, it's usually the last thing that I do. And the reason it's the last thing I do is because of the case itself, and you'll see. Okay, that's actually seated all the way. That wasn't too hard to get in there. Let's see, those are for LEDs. That's a button. Okay. It is in kind of a problematic spot. You can see that PCIe slot right there, which is the only one we get to plug the GPU into. And then the cooler goes right here. So, and then the fans come up in front of the cooler in the case. Again, not something you can see right now, but you will. I'm gonna go ahead and get the RAM slotted in here. That might be a mistake because again, I might have to remove it just to get some of these fan cables routed. I'm not really sure at this point, so we're gonna just gonna go for it. I think the only fans that are really gonna be on this case anyway are gonna be the intake fans for the CPU because the case has pretty limited space, and then you also end up with you're also going to end up with fans that have to be special ordered or that are smaller. This case doesn't come with fans. So because it's an ITX case. All right, so this is a 64 gig kit, and I went with a 64 gig kit because, well, you only have dual channel memory in this, or 2 slots on this board whatsoever. So I went with 2 32 gig Corsair Vengeance sticks. And this is not as fancy as some of them. This is a 5200 mega transfer. 5200 mega transfers per second. So it'll be fine though. It'll be good. Okay, so RAM is in, CPU is in, both SSDs are installed. I'm thinking the only thing that I really have to take out of here now is the bracketry that goes around this CPU. It looks like the back plate is secured pretty well to it, so I think we'll be just fine for continuing on here, which makes me really happy. So the next step is putting the board aside and pulling out the case. Now the case is a beast, so be ready for there to be not as great of a view as you're looking at this. And yeah, normally I have my BG Tech Repair shirt on today. Or I would have it on, but it's not a BG Tech Repair day. It's a let's build a computer day. You know what I mean? Get excited. Oh, excuse me. Normally I don't end up having lunch, but today I decided to have some lunch. I gotta say, I regret that decision a little bit. Usually I'm a big breakfast fan. I'm one nice big breakfast, and then the rest of it's just all whatever you want to be. But for me today, I had lunch, and it wasn't necessarily an appropriate lunch. Alrighty, we're gonna pull the panels off of this guy, strip it down, and make it look a little silly for the time being. This is the power supply side, so pull all the panels off. When I say all, I mean all. Need all the access you can get to this thing. So eventually there's going to be a GPU going in here too, so all available removable panels will be removed. And so you can't do a whole lot of installation without some screws being removed as well, so we're going to go ahead and remove the screws. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the regular Phillips head bit. Reason being is I'm done with board work for the time being, so I'm not doing any more SSD installs or anything like that, so I can transition to a normal screw bit, normal Phillips bit. Come on. Oh, hey. Did this get stripped out before I could even get it? It's like the screw is stuck in the hole there. They're not captive screws. I know that. I literally just pulled one of them out, so there we go. So what I'm trying to do right now is pull the cooler mount aside for the time being. One thing that's nice about this case is that the cooler mount is hinged. So you can open and close the case to access things as needed. Okay, there we go. And as I open it up, this little box wants to fall out. That's okay, because it's all the little screws. We're screwing the motherboard in place. You guys are going to get to see a fair bit of this because it's honestly a pretty straightforward build. The cooler is going to be the most, like I said, the most difficult thing about it. But it's 4 little screws that mount the motherboard in place. And the GPU is a little bit of a challenge, but nothing I haven't dealt with before. And since I'm installing a 7900 XT, it's probably not going to be the smallest GPU to fit in here, but based on what I have researched on this computer, it should fit just fine inside this case. So it should. I think my GPU is 315 millimeters, and this accepts up to 350. So we got some, a little bit of room. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and lay this case on its side because that is the way that we are doing this. Excuse you. That does happen a lot, so bear with me. See, there you go. It'll continue to happen. It's just, it does, I can push it back into place so it's a little more stiff, but it'll happen. Okay, so the way this installs is because the GPU goes vertically this way. The board has to lay this way with the top of the board being right there. So that means that my rear I/O should already be in place. It's looking pretty good. Not everything's lined up perfectly, but we can fix that in a moment. That's what this box is. It's full of all the fun little screws and doodads that we get to do, that we get to use for putting it together. So, looks like we have an audio jack splitter. And then we've got some twist ties and some guards for the PCIe slots, if you so desire to use those. I think it's only double slotted anyway, so there's not going to be a whole lot I can do with that. So I'm going to go ahead and just dump the screws. I always just dump the screws, so don't get mad, because it's just what I always do. And I think these are the board screws. I could be wrong. Those are SSD screws. And those are the SSD standoff things. These are for if you're doing those 2.5-inch SSDs, which we're not. So we're just going to kind of separate those out and set them aside for the time being, and one rolled away. But I just need 4 of these small screws. Now those 2 are different, so we got 1, 2, 3. That one goes there. Just doing a little sorting. That is a power supply screw. So is that. 4. Yeah, there's my board screw. Okay. Yep, gonna change the mode in which I'm operating here. Okay, 1 screw in. A few more to go. So with these, there's only 3 screws that have to go in them, so it makes life a little easier that way. Or not 3, I'm sorry. There's 4 screws that go in them, but there's only 3 left out of everything I've just done. There we go. Yeah, so the part that gets really tough, and I'm just looking here right now, because I hate doing it when everything's in here, is the front I/O really blows. Really blows. The little pins that allow the power button and stuff to actually function, I'm going to hook those up before we get too far into this process, because I dislike them otherwise. I'm going to go ahead and turn this because I can't see that side as well as you guys can. Oh. In a bit of a precarious situation here. There we go. And 1 more screw, 1 more board screw. I should have at least 1 more out here. Yep, right there. Get this board screwed in the rest of the way. Yeah, so for me today, it's gonna go board installed first, then front I/O, like USB, USB and things like that. And then after that, it's gonna be power supply. No. After that, it'll be cooler, then power supply, then GPU. So I can stand this up now because I got the board installed. So that's how the board looks inside this case. Worked out just fine. And so now I have to find the I/O. And I think it's all tucked down here in the bottom. Yep, it sure is. So my USB 3.0, there's a USB-C, my front panel connection, it's all right here, bundled up at the bottom. So USB-C is a little funny on this case. It actually, so this board accepts a USB-C connector, but this this computer, or the case for the computer, doesn't actually have a USB-C connector that plugs in the traditional sense. It plugs directly into the USB-C port on the back of the board. So that's what we are stuck with. Okay, so this is our front panel connections. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip this back up this way. Oh my gosh, stand up. There we go. Because most, if not all, of these connections need to be plugged in like now. So you got to get it done. I don't know where HD audio will plug in, but I guess we'll find out, huh? Front panel connection goes right there. And it looks like HD audio might go right next to it. I can't really tell. I almost feel like I need the manual for this board because this doesn't seem standard. I don't think it actually came with one. The case came with a manual, but a lot of good that does me. What's this guy? Maybe this is the key here. Look at everything I actually got with the case and we'll go from there. Okay, so this looks like a tiny board that slides in there, which is fine. I'm okay with that. So this tiny board does our 12 volt RGB. It does SATA connectors, and I think that says F panel. It does. Yeah. Okay. It's just a weird little thing, but it has it, so. Okay. Well, we're gonna go ahead and go through the little connectors that came with the board here, which I should have a couple more little tiny bags around. I got standoffs, which I don't need, and screws for standoffs, which I don't need. This might be my front panel and HD audio connections. Yeah, here we go. They always have these proprietary things for ITX builds, like I said, so it's a little complicated. Let's see, what do we have here? That says Power LED, HD. The thing about this is the front panel connectors are it's just a standard pinout, which maybe it's set up that way. Looks like it is, so that's good. And that says Speak Plus and Power LED. Okay, whatever. Hopefully this actually works. Go ahead and slide this connection into this tiny board here. Actually, I'm going to fish it through the bottom first. I really don't like this part that much. This seems a little fishy. Yeah, that's for system fans. This is the one for this. That's where it goes. Come on. I know it's where you go. being a little difficult to get in there. I have it going in the correct direction too, so no, doesn't make any sense why it would have that much resistance. Okay, I guess it's not supposed to bottom out there. All right, well that's that. And then it looks like this clips in down there. I do want to see if the HD audio is supposed to fit in here into this connection. I don't know, it looks like it. I think maybe that goes right there. Maybe, I guess we'll find out. Oh, except I plugged it in. I need to route it first, and then I can plug it in there. Oh my gosh. So this was a really annoying piece of whatever, piece of I/O when I was working on this the first time too. All of it's, you know, you forget these things if you don't do them all the time. And I don't build ITX builds all the time. So it's kind of all flooding back to me right now. And yeah, it was really freaking annoying when it was that way. Okay. So there's that. That's for my front panel connections. And I'm having a really hard time seeing down in here to actually find out which direction this is supposed to go in. It looks like it goes in this way. All these little proprietary. Oh my God. Come on. So annoying. You just figure your builds are going to be a crisscrossy mess or something when you put these together. There we go. Yeah, it feels like it's impossible to route that some way where it's not going to sit right over top of the cooler or something. What sitting over top of the cooler is not that big of a deal. It's the sitting over top of the GPU that's more of a big deal. So that I find uber annoying. Uber annoying. And the USB 3.0 cable, that routes right over top of the cooler. So that's kind of why when I got to a certain point, I was like, it's actually the USB 3.2 front cable right here. And it tends to route right over top of the cooler, and it interferes with how the cooler works and, well, not works, but how well I can mount it from the outset and everything. It's kind of a just atrocious pain in the butt. But it's way, way difficult to do later, so it's a do now item for sure. Okay, cooler's mounted, front I/O is mounted to the board, so we're good there. Or not cooler's mounted, USB 3.2 is mounted. Sorry, I'm getting all these things mixed up in my head here. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, that stuff's done. So next I'm gonna work on the cooler, and like I said, this is gonna be the part that takes the longest. It's gonna be probably the most you're gonna hear me swear during this build. I don't like to do that on YouTube, so I am sorry. And if I get flagged for it and, you know, blacklisted, I apologize. I'm gonna try and keep it to a minimum. There's gonna be some editing on this video, so whatever happens. Oh, that was the wrong screw. That's why that was working. I was like, what the heck is going on? I'm trying to take these brackets off because I'm pretty sure the nzxt cooler mounts a little bit differently than with these retention brackets that come by default with the AMD coolers, with the AMD boards. And so I accidentally started to unscrew, like, not accidentally started to, but I was working on taking off the actual plate for the CPU when I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so power supply, I'm gonna slide that stuff over here. I'm gonna actually go ahead and push the desktop aside for the time being too, while I work on getting I'll put the GPU down here, while I get the cooler unboxed and prepped for installation. So like I said, I went with the nzxt Kraken cooler, and the reason I did this is kind of twofold. One is I really wanted a good closed loop cooler, and I have had really good luck with the Kraken cooler in my build that I use for work. I have a Kraken 360 or something like that in that build. It's a Kraken, no, it's not a 360. I think it's a 280. Whatever it is the liquid cooler. It's a 2-fan model. It's very similar to this. It just has light-up fans, right? So it could have been a Kraken 240, but it was the fancy RGB Kraken. This one is the non-fancy version with a smaller readout for the display because I don't really care. I'm not going to see the display because it's actually going to be closed while I'm gaming. So it's not like I'm going to see the CPU temperature anyway. So, okay, here's what we got. So we've got 2 fans, which what you would expect because it's a 240. We've got back plates galore, which hopefully we don't have to do anything too wild. It looks like we mostly just have a mounting bracket. The back plate, I think, is for Intel because, you know, Intel boards are high maintenance. But yeah, this is the AMD hardware, so that'll be pretty easy. This is a back bracket, and it looks like it is just for Intel. So I will not be utilizing it at all. Let's see what else we got in here. We got some screws and washers for the fan and the cooler. We've got our mounting screws to actually mount the cooler to the bracketry there, and that's it. So that's all we need as far as that portion goes. The rest of this here is, we've got our CPU fan header, we've got our USB so we can hook up the Kraken, or not Kraken, what is it, nzxt cam software and do that. And then we've got our 2-way fan splitter that's going to be hooked up to the CPU fan header anyway. So that's that. I'll pull out the fun part here now, which is the actual cooler itself. And I believe nzxt does pre-apply thermal paste, as you can see there. So that's one aspect of this that we don't really have to worry about. And the next aspect of this that I do really have to worry about is how this is actually going to mount. And so I'm going to be doing a little dry fitting here to see what's what before we dig in too much. So, because I want the radiator to be mounted internally, obviously, and the fans as well. So what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to end up running the long screws through this, the long boys, through this here. And we'll probably put the fans in front of that. Yeah, that'll be good. Long boy. Yeah, the only part that's going to be the biggest challenge here is obviously actually holding it all in place while I mount it. So that will be a definitive challenge. There's no question about it. But we've got that there. So I'll just let this cooler, the radiator, kind of sit there for the time being. We'll go ahead and pull the fans out and get the twist ties off that are totally unnecessary. I understand why they're done that way. I understand why things are twist tied, just to hold wires in place, but Gotta tell you, man, my office is so full of twist ties because of building computers. And never have any shortage of twist ties. If you need twist ties, I am your twist tie supplier. Okay, so we're gonna put these fans in a pull configuration so they pull that nice, fresh, cool case air, or outside air through the radiator here. And I really want this to be looping over the top of the radiator here. Because like I said, this is going to be the hardest part, because what I have to do effectively is hold the radiator in place and hold the fan in place while I screw it through the mount for it, and do so accurately. So I'm holding it. It's going to move on me because it always does. Caught that screw. One advantage of being a little heavier, I suppose. I can catch screws so they don't fall down. Okay. Got that screw, got the washer on it. I'm going to slide it through the fan here. I'm going to run it into the hole on the radiator. I'm going to hold, change my screwdriver to stick it in mode, and we'll screw that screw semi-tightly into place. And we'll slide this down, line up that fan. And really, I'm kind of home free from this point. So the thing I'm basically trying to tell you here is it takes just one screw popped in there somewhat properly to hold it into place. And then you don't want to do it super tight, because if you do it super tight, then you won't get the rest of your screws in, or you won't be able to move your cooler as needed. So just be gentle with it. You know, if this is a build that you decide you want to do, I'll post all the details of my build and my PC part picker list in the description of this video, so you guys can enjoy trying to put it together yourselves. And if you're like, nah man, that was a lot of work, it looks stupid, well, that's fine. Plenty of other builds I've done that don't look stupid, and are probably more your speed. I screwed that one in too tight, so I'm going to loosen her up a little bit. There we go. So I've got the two top screws in, so this is essentially suspended where it is right now. I'm going to go ahead and get this second fan out of the bag. We're going to untwist tie it here. And go. I like to run my fingers over the cord a few times just to try and straighten it out some. Drives me crazy. I don't know why. And because we didn't have this mounted super duper hard to this cooler already, this other fan should slide right into position for the most part. Like so. It's occurring to me right now that you guys can't see exactly what I'm doing because I just now looked at the screen. So I'm sorry about that. You'll probably be seeing the bottom portion of what I'm working on here. But all in all, you'll see it once I have it fully mounted. So that's what truly matters here. So top 4 screws are in along this top edge here, which is it's up here, you know, in the area where you can't currently see. But the top screws are in. I'm gonna go ahead and get the bottom screws put in place here, and then I'll tighten everything up nice and tight, and we'll be ready to do the rest of the work on the cooler. I'm so excited. I know that this sounds really stupid, but the first thing I'm going to play on this is probably Stardew Valley. But I am going to mod the crap out of it. And it's not like Stardew Valley is a bad game in and of itself. There's just some really good mods out there. The modding community for Stardew Valley, holy cow. It's excellent. I'm also, like, I'm not opposed to console gamers or console gaming at all, because I've really enjoyed my consoles, like my Switch, my Xbox, my PS5, but I feel like the Xbox is becoming a little redundant these days, because any game you can get on Xbox, you can pretty much get on PC, so there are some exclusives, like, I don't know if Forza is an exclusive, but if you've got Microsoft as your OS, then I'm pretty sure you can get Forza on Windows. Sorry, right now I'm going through and I'm tightening up all these screws on the cooler because I just finished putting them all in. Okay, there we go. That's done. So I'll flip this so you guys can see it. My cooler is mounted. And yeah, it doesn't look super great. But the reason that there's a bar that runs across right here is just because this it can have a 240 or a 280 millimeter cooler mounted. I have a 240. The reason I went with 240 is because I like a little room in my case. I didn't want to go with a 280 and have to deal with a whole bunch of crap, so I just did it this way. For me, it's easier. I like it. I've had this look before, and I'm okay with it because honestly, there's not going to be any RGB, so you're not going to see this line over here that runs across anyway. Not a big deal. I built a computer that did have RGB, however, and it wasn't my favorite look, so I'll just say that. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do, I've got these fan cables here that come off of this, and they run to, they need to run to the CPU fan header, and the cooler actually came with a fan splitter, and we're going to take that fan splitter, and we're going to go ahead and hook those fans up. Hook them up, hook them up. There's a SATA power adapter with this. Oh, it's all one giant unit. Well, I can't say that that's my favorite thing in the world, but okay. Okay, so here we go. This cooler this is the end that goes into the actual cooler itself. It plugs into the pump, and so it'll show you what your temperatures are and communicate some data back. Coming off of that, we have the header for the AIO pump or whatever it is. I believe that's what that's supposed to be. We've got our fan splitter that comes off of it too for our fans. We've got our SATA power here, right? And then we've got our USB cable, which will allow nzxt cam to interact with it. So you can change your performance settings and things if you like. Now, the thing I don't like is that any cooler you buy anymore these days comes by default with the Intel bracket pre-installed on the end of the cooler, or on the head of the cooler. So we need to switch it out for the AMD bracketry that goes on the end of this, or the AMD mounting bracket. That way we don't have to deal with Intel's garbage, right? So we had our AMD right there. And I will say the one nice thing about this is that after I get this all put on, ugh, come on, don't be that guy. After I get this put on, should snap right in place. Oh, that's not the way I want it to be. Is that the way I want it to be? That's not right either. Well, I'll be. And now it's stuck. Come on, guys. What do we got to do here to get this just right? So I want this at the top, mounted like so. There we go. That should be correct. So essentially, this is going to be the pump, or not the pump, I'm sorry. The hoses are actually going to be at the bottom of the CPU. It's going to mount what looks to be sideways, but it's going to work out perfectly for this. I'm going to go ahead and stick this back into the plastic protection covering, even though it's not going to work. Just to keep that thermal paste safe. It falls off anyway, so we should be safe to do what we're doing here. So I started the process of removing these retention things that came with it. We're going to go ahead and replace those retention things that came with it with the double-sided retention screws here. And those are going to work with the mounting screws here. So I'm going to go ahead and get that process started. And sorry guys, I'm still getting over a cold a little bit. I have just the remnants of it left, really, is what it feels like at this point. And I always like to do a quick test with the screws that actually hold them in place, like the screw ends, to see which side is actually going to be facing outward. And I think it's going to be this side, because, yeah, there we go. So this side faces down, and because we're working with an AM5, we're going to mount it like this. So AM4 is smooth side up, and AM5 is textured side up. If you look real close at that, you can see that. That's what that configuration is supposed to show you. And so because we're AM5 for this socket, we're going to do it with the trash can lid facing up. So that's fine, not a big deal. Go ahead and screw these into their little spots here. Very, very easy. That's what it always reminds me of anyway, is like a trash can lid, and I don't know why. Like, you know the old steel trash bins that had that texturing on it or whatever? And the ribbing, I guess is what it is. Okay. Probably doesn't make that much of a difference, to be completely honest with you, but you can do it the right way anyway. Okay, there we go. All right, so I've got the mounts in place and ready to go. So now it's time for me to take this end here, and I should be able to go ahead and just hook her right up. But here's the issue. Okay, and this is what I talked about a little bit before, is that USB 3.0 cable, super annoying, and it gets in the way. We're going to do the best we can anyway with what we've got, because it's what we got. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hand tighten a couple of these ends on, just to be sure that the IHS is in place and it won't move on us. And then I'll dump out the Intel crap here. Again, they include it. They put it all with the Intel stuff, and I don't like that. But I suppose Intel is probably the most commonly installed CPU. I just don't like to think that because I like AMD a lot. And Intel's not doing so great right now. Like, you know, we all know that they're going to come back at some point, you know? But they're not doing so hot at the moment. That 14 series burned up pretty bad, so. Okay. Sheesh, I'm looking at my recording time so far, and I'm at 1 hour and 6 minutes this far. It's crazy because it doesn't really feel like it. It feels like I've been doing this for like 30 minutes. But as I stop here and I explain things and I talk and get easily distracted by things, it all makes sense. It all adds up to me. The best part about this is there's no moving parts internally. The only moving part that there will be internally will be the GPU fans, and those will be facing out that way towards the front. But the CPU mount and cooler is all installed and ready to roll. So now that the CPU cooler is all installed and ready to roll, let me set this up so you guys can actually see what we're working with here. So the inside, if you do an ITX build, the inside is not going to be pretty. And the reason I tell you this is because, well, it's just not. Everything mounts a little bit sideways. And I'm sorry, I'm going to try and fix your viewing angle here some. This is a really nice camera, but it has the, I'm using an OBSBot Tiny. Okay, don't point to the ceiling. Just point into the computer. There we go. Somewhat. It doesn't want to stay like centered. There we go. So anyway, when you do one of these builds, they're not going to be pretty inside, and it's because the cables have nowhere to go. After I mount the power supply in the back here, you're going to notice that there's even more cabling, and you're going to be like, dude, this thing is messy as all get out. What are you doing? And that's just the nature of an ITX build. It's cramming as much as you can into one of these little cases. So that being said, let's cram some more crap in here, okay? Good crap though. I mean, it's good crap. It's power supply time, right? So we'll go ahead and push all this stuff aside from the cooler installation. And we'll get rolling with the power supply install. So for the power supply, because I am so infinite in my wisdom, went with a Corsair SF1000L. Now, I am partial to Corsair power supplies, but that is because I have never had a bad experience with one. You may not be of the same opinion, and that's okay. However, Corsair was one of the few I could buy if I didn't want to pay $400 for a power supply that was 1,000 watts for this build. And the reason I wanted a 1,000 watt power supply so bad is because I have a 7900 XT. And now, if you're not familiar with that, and you're kind of an NVIDIA fanboy, the 7900 XT, it does 4K gaming. So, and if you wanted to get real specific, the 7900 XTX is like a 4090 Ti. That's the next step up from what I'm looking at. Only the difference here is I think that the 7900 XT is like a 4080 Ti, so it does do that 4K gaming really nice. I just want to make sure that my GPU is protected, my board is protected, and everything in here is protected by a really good power supply, right? So moving on, let's open this guy up. So we've got the ATX 3.0 standard. So if you did want to buy this and put it on your NVIDIA fanboy GPU, you probably couldn't anyway, because I don't think it has, oh, it does have that 12, it has that 12 volt power. Here's my beautiful, that's like my least favorite plastic sound. Yikes. Here's my power cord. My screws are in there for mounting it. And let's see, what else do we get with this guy? Yes, he does come with a plate to mount if you wanted to mount this into a case that doesn't really support. Like if you wanted to put this power supply, I think, in a standard spot, you could. If you just wanted a smaller power supply overall. And you're gonna notice, it's small. It's small, but everything about this build is small. Because it's intended to replace my Xbox. This is still bigger than an Xbox, but it's pretty close. Alrighty, so taking a look at this, I always, for some reason, when this first came out, was thinking that this power supply had the connections on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, which was what I thought the L stood for, but I was wrong. It's just a standard power supply with your power cable going in the back and your power supply cables coming out the front. Now, it's not going to matter too much because this mounts a little further up in the case, which I think is actually the interesting part about this build. Well, it doesn't actually mount further up in the case, but the way that you get the cable, the power cable, to where the power supply is, because the power supply isn't at the top of the case, or isn't at the bottom of the case where you typically plug it in, the power cable actually plugs in down here at the bottom, and the power supply mounts up here, and there is this nifty little cable that runs up to it. So I'm hoping that that cable, it feels like it's the same thickness as the cable that I currently have. I don't think we're going to have too much of a problem. Because I didn't do a whole lot of crazy hoo-ha with the storage, like we're not doing any 2.5-inch drives. All we really need is our 24-pin connector, our CPU connector, and I think a single SATA, and then the PCIe for the graphics card. Now, I think these are still standard lengths. So, I'm sorry, it's gonna get messy real fast. And I say that because it just simply will. I think I need to open my GPU to take a peek at it. Not because I love my GPU or because I think it's beautiful, but because I need to see how many pins are actually going on. Oh, I just dropped it. It's still in the box, so it's probably just fine. But I need to see how many pins actually go onto the bottom of it, because it's not like printed anywhere on the outside of the box. It doesn't say 16 pins or, you know, something like that. But it's time to open it. Okay. I went with the Sapphire version. I like the Sapphire GPUs. I don't know why. I got one directly from AMD for when I upgraded my main rig last year. Here, my work rig, and I put a 7800 XT in this one. And I liked the look of it. It felt really nice, so just kind of stuck with it. Oh, please don't be too thick, boy. That's what I'm most worried about. I know that the length will fit. I just hope that the chunkiness isn't going to be too chunky. That's the thing with these new GPUs, is they're nice and thick. All right. Give me what I'm working with. Okay, so I got a 16-pin connection. Look at how beautiful she is. Look at it. Oh, are you following me now? Stop looking. I don't know what to do. I think I gotta do this again. Is that right? So the camera does this tracking thing, but I don't remember what it's supposed to, how I stop it. Whatever. I'm getting ahead of myself. I really want to pull the peels off of this thing, but I know I shouldn't, okay? So, whatever. Set it over there for now. So it requires a 16-pin connection for it, so that's the CPU connector. I believe for CPU, we only have a single 8-pin connector as well. Yeah, that's correct. 8-pin connector for the CPU. Are you just following my every... Huh? I'm over here now. All right. Well, cool. It's fine that it's following me. I just didn't really want you to look at my face during this. I wanted you to look at the computer, because that's the important part, right? I'm not here to flaunt these looks, which I don't have. I'm here to build a computer. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get some cables put in this guy. So we got the CPU connector. Wow, that's the wrong side, definitely. CPU right there. Put it in there. Okay. What else? I got a PCIe. And if we're going fan facing out, and I want a good spot for the PCIe connector, probably going to want to stick PCIe over here. I'm just trying to figure out where I need to place that. Again, more twist ties. They're on everything. Tired of it. Tired of twist ties. Okay, so we're plugging 2 of these in. The one thing you don't have to worry about with these is that these, in reality, they don't have a special... oh, I guess this does have 2, a double, doesn't it? I guess I just must have pulled the secondary PCIe out first, didn't I? I mean, I probably still want to stick to a traditional look for PCIe. I'm going to do 2 individuals. So what I'm trying to do here, like, let me explain this a little bit. So most PCIe connections, when you have a power supply, you get one end goes into the power supply, and that's this side right here. The other end usually has this, which is your dual PCIe connectors, right? And when you're running something to a powerful GPU like what I just have, or what I have here, you don't end up wanting to, how do I say this? You don't want to run your GPU on just one connection. I'd rather have 2 connections that are really solid, right? Just because I want the most amount of power going to it as possible, because I don't really want to burn out that GPU. So what I'm doing is I'm running 2 PCIe connectors, because for some reason this power supply comes with PCIe connections that are also single, right? So you got one side that goes to the power supply, the other side goes to the actual GPU. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and run it that way. We're going to plug 2 of these in, and it's going to give us a bigger cable, or a larger amount of cables running out, but ultimately it will be better for our GPU's power. Okay, and because the cooler requires SATA power, I have to hook up a SATA connection as well. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here. Okay. I have reasoned with myself that that will work. And then we gotta grab our 24-pin connector, which is right here. I'll plug that bad boy in. Oof. I wish you'd stop following my face. I almost feel like I have to put my face behind the power supply just so you look at the power supply. That's really what I want you to look at. That's what I want you to see. Okay, so here we go. Power supply is all done. Everything is plugged in, and we're gonna go ahead and shove this bad boy into the case. We're gonna get it organized, and we're gonna get this done. So the hardest part about this, as I've already told you guys, is just the cable management aspect. So there's not a whole lot of room for me to work with inside this case. So I gotta do what I gotta do. The thing is getting the 24-pin connector through here is gonna be kind of a pain in the butt. There's not as much space as there ever used to be. Gosh, I don't know what happened with that thing. I don't recall that being there in the past. But there's a hard drive bay in here that you can't really detach that's right alongside the computer. And so, oh, maybe you can. Oh, there's actually a shroud here that I can pull off entirely. That will allow me more access. So I'm gonna do that really quick. And you'll see it come out, but it's right here, right below where the screwdriver is. There's a line. That's another cable management channel, and I'm gonna take full advantage of that. I don't really know the reason why the camera started to follow my face around. Can't say I'm a fan of that, but I'm sorry, guys. Oh, that removed a lot more than I expected it to, actually. So I'm going to turn it this way. Now you can see there's a whole lot of room for me to push those power supply cables down through here. Right there. Yeah, thanks for looking at that, Tiny. But yeah, right through here. So I'm going to go ahead and get that power supply slid in there. We can just drape those cables on in and we'll get it going. Again, as I said, we're going to have a little bit of difficulty when it comes to getting the GPU in after the fact, but it's kind of what we have to do, right? So we'll do it because it's what we have to do. All right, flipping this around again so I can have better access to this. I'll pull this out. We're just going to go ahead and let all of these cables glide right into that empty GPU bay at the moment. And if I decide to reorg, and I decide to reorg. There we go. That 24-pin connector was being a bit of a bear. Okay. I think this might be a little bit of what I dealt with last time. I had a little bit of difficulty sliding it in the first time. Actually, this was extremely easy. Got that in with no problem. So, all right, here we go. So, as I said, it's about to get messier. And if you could see inside this case right now, you would totally agree with me. But we got to put the screws in for the power supply to hold it in place. That way it doesn't go walking around on us while we're working on things. Come here. Power supply screws are a lot the same way, where you simply screw them in, or sorry, a lot the same way as I did the cooler, where you screw them in most of the way to begin with, and then once you're done screwing them in most of the way, then when you've done all four, And you can just go around and tighten everything up again. Reason I do this is just because the power supply, it will match up. It's just that you don't want to make it too tight one direction. It doesn't go in properly. There's always a little bit of play in the slots when you're doing these. So, okay, now I can go ahead and plug this cable in. And we are power supply ready now. So power supply is installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of cable management on this front side, shove stuff places that it needs to go just to get it out of the way. And then I will start shoving things around inside the case. And in the end, I'll show you what it looks like, because in reality, you're not gonna be able to make sense of any of it anyway until it's done. So this is the fun part. I'm gonna lay it down on its side here. Okay. We got this 24-pin connector, and it's all the way out of the way here. I do not like where that wound up. I'm really, really, really hopeful that my GPU fits in here. Because the fact that all these stupid power supply cables come out the front is not probably going to work out in my favor. Stop looking at me. Look down. Look down at the computer. That's where I want you to be. Stop AIing. Okay, guys. I am sorry about that. I had a really weird situation just pop up where I ran out of space on my main drive on my PC. I thought I was already recording to a secondary drive because I've got like 6 terabytes of storage in this machine here. For obvious reasons, because I do this kind of work a lot. But I digress. Anyway, it's kind of get back to it time. So I already got the CPU connector in, and my stupid webcam is wanting to do whatever it wants to do right now. And I want you guys to see the computer. So you can see I got that CPU power connector in. I decided to route it back through the hard drive channel because I didn't want a lot of spare cabling just hanging out there. I routed the SATA cable that direction too, since eventually this cooler cable has to come off and plug in up there as well. So I'm really hoping to keep all the cables that direction towards the back of the case where this power button over here is. And the reason being is because I still have a GPU to mount on this front side, and I don't really want anything getting in my way, right? So that being said, I'm going to take this opportunity to actually install my GPU, and we'll see if I can get it done the traditional way. If not, I might have to pull the top of the case off and slot it in that way. It is a big boy, so there's a good chance that I won't be able to do it the correct, or not the correct way, but the traditional sense. Oh my gosh. You know what, guys? It's gonna go in. And it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be just fine. The power supply cables were, as I worried, kind of an issue. Who's calling me? I'm in the middle of something. Okay. Give me a minute. Hello. What's up? Oh, that's because I decided to start building my computer early. So, yeah. Oh, I actually was just on my business phone because it was going haywire and I didn't get anything. I just now saw it pop through, so. But yeah, I'm just working on building my computer, so I'm alive. Okay, sounds good. All right, bye. My wife making sure I'm alive. I got started here and didn't check in there, so makes sense. Well, this is kind of annoying, because now that I got it in, I can't get it back out. So, why is it never in the mode I need it in? That's just what I need. So when I work on a computer, I need a screwdriver that's always in the mode I need it to be in. So I think I might need to buy another LTT screwdriver, so I have one that is working for clockwise and counterclockwise, and I can just get color-coded ones. There we go. Oh my gosh. I'd really love to be able to take the front of this off so I can pull this back. I can't get a really good view of where my GPU is landing. So it's time to turn things so I can see better. And even then, I still don't think I'm going to have a great perspective on it. Man, it's landing right next to the slot. Right next to it. It's because of these dumb power supply cables, I'm telling you. They have to be where they are, but I find it very annoying. Like the 24-pin connector comes out that end there, right? And it's fine that it does because it needs to be there. But it pushes the GPU in such a way that I can't get the GPU to find its slot and slot in for me. Come on, big boy. You can do this. I know you're in the slot. Literally can see that you're there now. I got it situated in the slot, but now I can't get it to lock in. Oh boy. Okay. This is the annoying part right here. This is the struggle of trying to put a full-size graphics card into an ITX case. So if this is something you are looking to do, have patience because it's going to take a lot of work to get it done. Now me, I am going to stand up. For what reason? I don't know. Maybe it'll give me a better vantage point. Maybe it'll let me lock it into place. I really can't say. It seems like the GPU is in. But since I can't get a clear view of the slot, I can't tell you. Oh, okay, here we go. The front does come off. That's helpful. Yep, she's in. She's just a little wonky at the moment. Can't say I'm a huge fan of how the case is working here. Basically, what we've got here is a classic. The GPU is seated in the board, but it's not seated onto the screw holes because the case doesn't want to go there. And part of it could be because these power supply cables keep pulling or pushing this GPU back the wrong direction. I really don't want to ruin. Again, here we go. Stupid screws weren't faced the right direction. Okay, so GPU screwed in on one. And now we're fully in position. Okay, so the GPU is fully mounted now. And I have to show you because, what a headache, right? Like this whole process. But I got the front of the case off. It was forcing itself off anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this. There you go. So you can see pretty clearly that it's in the slot right there, right? But this bottom part here, where it screws into the actual case, did not want to screw in, and it was really offset. But it's hard because your power supply cables come out through one slot. I can't put the power supply in backwards, otherwise it doesn't work. So the choices are limited. In a case like this, you're really smashing all these things in as tightly as you can just to get it to work. And it's going to. We know it's going to. So that being said, let me go ahead and put some of these power supply cables in place here so that we can get this build wrapped up because we're so close to the end. Do my winders install. Now a little stronger, dig a little deeper. Boy, the whole case just flexed the other direction when I put the PCIe power connector in there. It's obviously super great. Would be nice if these, the one thing I'll say for Corsair that they could do if you're going to have a small form factor power supply like this is instead of having such stiff cables, let them be a little more flexible. Because these small form factor cases that we're working in here, they kind of require a little bit more space. And I didn't go with a Corsair case just because I don't know, it's a little too big. Even for an ITX case, it's still a little big for what I wanted. And Corsair, if you do watch this video, which I doubt you are, but if you watch this video, just know that I love your products, and I find you to be some of the most reliable on the market, but ITX case-wise, there's not a lot out there from you guys specifically. Also, stock ITX cases at like stores like Best Buy, because people want small form factor builds. People want something like this that has all the performance but none of the bloat of the massive tower on their desk or whatever. You know, like this isn't just a me thing. Oh, jeez. Yeah, if these cables were way more flexible, I could slide it back into this hard drive slot and have so much more room to work with, but it is what it is, right? I know I can get cable mod cables that are like the flexible ones and stuff too, but nah. Extra money, you know. I didn't really want to be dumping into it. Okay, all right. So the power supply is now plugged in. Stay up a little bit, okay? So that they can see. The power supply is plugged in. You can see the PCI power connectors here. I got one pushed in there pretty good, like this top one. I pushed it back in through this hard drive bay that's up here, back here, pretty good. It runs right alongside the power supply. But the other one, it's too tight to run that other cable back there. It's back there, but it won't continue to go back further. There's just not enough room. So it's one of those cables that's just gonna have to live inside the case, unfortunately. So now is the moment that we kind of all been waiting for, and that's that I have to hook this mess of a thing and throw another mess of cables into this case. You know, I went with this cooler because I needed something that would work efficiently and fit appropriately in here. And maybe I should have gone with the IQ Link cooler because it would have been a little easier to deal with in terms of the amount of cabling that goes into it, but who knows? It's anyone's guess at this point. What would have worked? Shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? So here we are. We got our SATA power. So I'm gonna go ahead and hook this into the end SATA power. Little cable here, and then I'll shove it back up in there as much as I can. Back up into that hard drive bay. And I'm actually gonna try and put some of this other cabling up into there too, so it's kind of tucked out of the way. Because in reality, this shouldn't be that big of a deal. We've got our CPU fan header and the CPU fan spot on the board is right there. So we've got it hooked up that way. Now if I can get this darn thing closed while keeping the loops intact, I'll be happy. Here's the real challenge is now the whole dang thing has to close. So, oh yeah, we still have the USB cable to plug in too. Oh my gosh. I'm really hoping that I don't end up having to mount the cooler the other way around so that the loops are face down, because then I would be kind of beside myself a little bit. But I think I did this incorrectly because I think I do need these, the nubs that are up here at the top to be at the bottom, because there's just a little bit of extra space at the bottom where they can slide into place. So this is technically upside down for this particular case anyway. Go. USB cable is plugged in, and a for some stupid reason I ran it through the loops. It's not going to change anything with regards to how this operates. It'll operate all the same. It's just I can't close the door on the case, which is a big deal. And you live and you learn, you know, like every PC build is a little different. And like I said, it's been a while since I've done one of these, so yeah, that's definitely going to smash those loops down. So yeah, this whole radiator that I have in here has to be flipped over entirely and rerouted. So it's fine. Like I said, it's not going to be a huge undertaking. It'll take me just as long as it took me to mount the cooler the first time. But because the radiator loops are up top and there's little to no space up top to work with, they need to be flipped to the bottom where there's more clearance for them to actually fit appropriately. So I'll get my screwdriver ready, put it into takeout mode. I really want to leave the screws. They don't, damn, what the hell? I didn't want to lose, the screw didn't want to stay in there. It really wanted to come out. I really wanted the screws to stay. That way all that I have to do is flip the radiator and I don't have to really mess with the fans at all. So what I want to do is use the screws as sort of a bracket to hold the fans in place. And if I can move quickly enough, I think I can pull the radiator off without having to do any work to the fans. It's just that some of these stupid screws, or this screwdriver in particular, lttstore.com, really wants to pull these screws out. This one, there's another one, there we go. It's what it's meant to do. It's just not what I want it to do at this very moment in time. Okay, now can I pull the rad off? Nope, I can't. Okay, well, whatever. 'Tis what it is. Did I miss a screw? Is that why? I feel like I missed a screw. Was that why? Can I pull the rad off now? No? What's going on with you guys? Be nice to me. Let me do something simply instead of in the difficult manner. Each of these screws has a little personality. And right now I don't like any of your personalities. There we go. There we go. It started to come loose now. Okay, so the rad is officially off the fans. So now what I'm going to do is take the rad and flip it. Oh no. Well, it didn't work out. The fans fell off and the rad is twisted. So I'm not doing this the proper way, I guess. I just didn't want to have to go through all that again. But 'tis what it is, right? Life and stuff. Another annoying thing about the twist ties is they always get caught in my screwdriver. There we go. Now the one thing I'm not too sure on at this point is I know I need to mount this here. and in this direction. Sorry guys, I'm really just trying to think out loud here. We'll get it, we'll screw it all together and we'll see how it goes together. But outside of that, I can't guarantee that this is going to work the way I need it to either. Just do a test close here. Because it'll all fit, it's just I can't have pinched hoses and stuff inside of here. Do I need to direct the hoses downwards and then push it? No, because that takes up the space where they need to be. Oh my gosh. Alrighty. Well, I'm going to keep going. I'll figure it out as I go. No, that's because I screwed that into the wrong thing. Which is why that's not working. I don't like that there's... I think they should just put one kind of acceptable screw in here. Or one kind of acceptable cooler. And just say, that's it. That's the only type of cooler you can use. Now at this point, I'm glad I'm not doing an air cooler because I didn't want the moving parts inside of it, but this is where a liquid cooler and an ITX build really complicate things, because when you have an ITX build that with a liquid cooler such as this, it's really, really hard to find just the right spot for it. So we're going to be tinkering around with the hoses and everything inside to get them to fit properly. So I can close this door, because between the power supply cable management and everything else, there's a lot of work yet to be done on this computer. Thought I was nearing the end, and I think that if everything would have gone as I had originally intended it to, it would have been the end, but here we are. And it's just how it works sometimes. I think I've only ever had, you know, well, I've had a fair bit of uncomplicated builds, but you know, you get into situations such as these, and I've had problems where parts don't fit or parts aren't working because it's the wrong thing, or, you know, stuff happens. Well, how is that possible? What I'm trying to figure out right now is there is a screw. It's in all the way over here, but it's not finding the hole in the radiator. To mount to. And I know the hole's not stripped out, so this is in the right location here. Is it just that it needed to be pushed up? No, it's just still not finding the hole. What the heck is going on? Okay. Fine. Let's try the bottom one. Still not screwing in. Okay. Well, I did not have this problem initially, so... And all the screws are all screwed in on the one side, but they are not on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay this guy down. And we're going to do it the way that we did it initially, which is just to let everything kind of hang on this radiator for the first... Okay. That was really uncool, but... I'm going to go ahead and loosen these back up. I don't think they're really all that tight, to be honest. That's not tight. It's in, but it's not tight. That went in. These screws with the washers are just barely long enough to make it all the way through. So this radiator has to be really, really, really sucked up onto the fans. And if there's any sort of gapping, you can just forget about anything working the way it's supposed to. So I'm really having to be a little forceful with trying to get these screwed in, and that'd be why. But when I am, it works perfectly. So like I said, I'm probably going to have to adjust the way that the actual CPU cooler is seated. But once I get that into position, I think we'll be able to close it up safely. Mostly kind of worried about the power coming out of the GPU at this point, or going into the GPU, because it doesn't want to sit nicely. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, so the radiator's mounted the correct direction. We've got the loop cables should be able to go back towards the back here. And I think if I just had this and scooch all these power supply cables out of the way, they're mostly the issue right now, actually. Yeah, so I think what I need to do is turn the cooler 45 degrees so that the loops are up at the top. They'll hit the RAM, they'll bump the RAM that way, but they have to be done that way because if not, then they won't close appropriately, or the case won't close appropriately. So I'm gonna work on fiddling with that a little bit. Other than that, I mean, honestly, I think we're doing okay. And in reality, what that's about is just loosening the pressure on this silly mounting bracket and not bending pins and being careful while doing so. But essentially just have to turn it so that that bracket is mounted in such a way that the tubes are facing towards the RAM. I don't particularly enjoy having to do this type of thing after I'm at this stage, but you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. So, and what we gotta do is get this darn computer built, right? Oh man. Oh no. I hate it when this happens. So what happened with this now is that one of the heads on this is so tight that it's pulling the bracket out of the board. The screw head adhered a little too much. This piece. So instead of just pulling this piece off on one of the mounts, it's actually pulling out the whole thing. Like all the standoff all the way down, which I don't care for. I find that really annoying. But it does happen sometimes. It either means that I over tightened it or that it had some Loctite on the threads, which is definitely a possibility. There's just not really a way for me to stop it from being that way, so I'm gonna have to pull that apart once I get it out. Yep, just like that. Basically, it requires me to pull this part off, unscrew it, ugh, come on. I hate it when things wipe across the CPU thermal paste because I really don't like having to redo all that. Okay. Okay. So instead of having the loops go, or the CPU mount that direction, or the CPU cooler mount that direction, we're going to pull this bracket off. We're going to make it so that it mounts at a 45-degree angle that way, and so that these electrical cables or the signal cables from that the wiring harness that came with it will route down towards the bottom of the case. And again, here we go, we have to avoid that USB 3.0, but there's also all of the other cables that are in here currently that we have to avoid as well. So we'll get this put back into position here. Get a couple of these thumb screws on. And we didn't really lose any thermal paste, so I'm not super worried about that. I do feel a lot better about how this is going to close up now, because it should close up with minimal interference from anything else. And honestly, this isn't that bad. All right, anyway, this thumb screw will pick up with the LTD screwdriver, and screw that back down. Nice and tight. And we'll do the next one. We'll start ratcheting that now. Screw that down nice and tight. There we go. Now let's see if we can close this with these loops the way they are now, because we should have a lot easier of a time doing so at this point. Well, now my wife's home. Yeah, so it'll work. It's not the loops that are interfering this time. Now it's just the dumb power supply cables, which have to be shoved down below the... My gosh. The way everything has to route in here is kind of infuriating. Yeah, it's pushing on the, you can see it's pushing on the power supply cables here. I just wish there was more room in this case. And I know that the idea is to keep it small, keep it simple. Now the loops are getting in the way because the power supply cables are in the way. It's this stupid 24-pin connector. I'm taking a break, guys. I'm taking a break. Okay, I'm back. I got the door closed. And that's really all I want to say about it. I did get everything repositioned inside. I got the GPU cables. I just basically zip stripped the stupid 24-pin connector of the power port of the power supply. I zip stripped it down to the power supply cradle, essentially. So all right, guys, so I did get it running. It took some time and effort to get all the cables not mishmashed because every time I would move something, something else would get unplugged. So I finally got everything into the case to the point where it's not coming unplugged anymore, and was able to get everything closed up and buttoned up. So just got it to boot into BIOS. It looks great. I'll take you guys over there and show you that. But then I'm just going to install Windows and get it set up in the theater. Okay, so here you guys can see I've got it closed up, and the reason I've got it closed up is because if you just look in there, you can kind of see it's already a mess. But one thing that my chief complaint I would say about this case is how much flex it puts on my graphics card. My graphics card doesn't have to have this much flex, doesn't have to be pushed at such an angle like this, but it is. So I guess what I would say, you know, if I was recommending a case to you, is either go with a lower profile GPU or find maybe a different case. Maybe do go with a Corsair case. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. All I know is that the Hyte case does shove my GPU to the right quite a bit, and it's really obnoxious. But I mean, all in all, everything's built and it works great. You can see it's running just fine there, and we're in BIOS up here. So everything's plugged in and functional. I'm just going to get Windows thrown on it, and that'll be it. Hey guys, so it is now Monday, and after the weekend, I have been able to actually enjoy my gaming PC quite a bit. It was a bit of a challenge to get it built, I'm not gonna lie. When it comes to the actual fitting everything into the case, it was a challenge, you know. As I showed you kind of earlier in that previous snippet, it was very difficult to get that door closed that the cooler was mounted to, with the fact that all those power supply cables were in there and they were kind of in the way. So if I'd had just a little bit more of a tolerance on that power supply front to back, I think everything would have worked out a little bit better. I did manage to get it taken care of. I didn't show the rest of it in the video because I was reaching my wit's end, and it's not usually very pretty when I get to that point. So I took a break. I came back at it with a fresh mind. I want to say 20-30 minutes later. Found out that I could zip strip the 24-pin power supply connector that goes to the motherboard up to that hard drive bay, I guess is what it is, the bottom part of it, which allowed it to run a little bit flatter in there. And then I was able to just take those power supply cables for the graphics card and pull them flat across the top of that power supply channel, which allowed for that door to close successfully. So I did manage to get everything closed up, buttoned up, and it looked pretty good. However, it did take a fair bit of work. So, I mean, sometimes it happens that way. It's just how it is. But anyway, after enjoying it this weekend, I was able to play some Cyberpunk on it. I was able to play Stardew and a whole bunch of other games. Some stuff that was graphically intensive, some stuff not so much. But it ran all my games in 4K that it could render in 4K, just because some of them are not 4K. Stardew is obviously not a 4K game. Just this morning, I checked out to see if I could get my controller working. Not my controller, but two controllers wirelessly working on the computer at the same time to play Stardew. The answer to that is actually yes, so this will be perfect. It's going to work out really well. Anyway, stay tuned for the end here, where I'm actually going to show you what's next and what it looks like on the big screen and how it's all functioning. So I don't get too in-depth with it, just kind of show you that it works and kind of compare it to the size of the Xbox, which is a little different. Thanks for watching. So yeah, so as you guys can see, it is up and running. That is my logon screen there. There's the computer there. It does look very similar to the Xbox. Though in a size comparison, it definitely is not the same. So what I'll do here is I'll actually show you guys what the size of it is in comparison to the Xbox, because I'll set it right next to it. Now don't judge me. It's probably going to be a little dusty over here just because I also had to re-terminate some Ethernet cabling, so there's some stuff going on here. It wasn't exactly the most simple of setups, but we got it done. Anyway, here we go. Hey Google, turn on the theater room lights. So in comparison, I would say that the new PC is probably about 4 or 5 inches taller than the Xbox, but it works for me. So, I mean, no complaints here. And it looks like the computer went to sleep. Give me 1 second. Get that back up here. Oh yeah, I turned off my keyboard and mouse because I'm smart. There we go. So, yeah, as you can see, it's working. Comes back up. It runs the games just fine. I actually played some Cyberpunk on it this weekend and maxed it out. You can see it's showing the 4K up there in the corner that it's operating at from the GPU. So, all in all, it worked out. It was kind of a pain in the butt, but worthwhile build, and I loved it. I loved playing it this weekend. I've got my little lap desk down here now, and I've got my Xbox Elite controller hooked up too. So this morning I'm actually going to test and see if I can get my PS5 controller to connect to it simultaneously. And if I can, that means local co-op Stardew. Hey Google, turn off the theater room lights. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this content, again, be sure to like and subscribe down below.